what does this, and this all have in common? Find out today in the first episode of Frame of Thought. Joan Crawford, Hollywood legend. Although perhaps most known for her movies during the 1930s and 1940s, Crawford began her film career in silent pictures. In this episode, we will examine how this Academy Award-winning actress continued to use silent movie acting techniques throughout her career to terrific effect, and how the art of eye acting and facial stillness, exemplified by Crawford, may be one of the key components in a prestige performance. To begin, we're going to go back, way back to the 1920s when movies were still in their infancy and silent cinema reigned supreme. Although cinema was a relatively new medium, an increasing interest about an expanding industry spawned many trade papers and magazines dedicated to moving pictures. One particular growing fascination was with the actors, then referred to as the players. Naturally, film enthusiasts wanted to know the names of the actors and see stills from their favourite scenes, but perhaps surprisingly, many articles waxed lyrical on what exactly made a screen performance different from the stage, and of course, what constituted a great screen performance. Imagine it's 1923 and you're a fan of moving pictures. You pick up the latest copy of Picture Play magazine. In it, you come across an article about movie acting, and it asks you to picture an actor, any actor you like. When you do you visualise and remember the actor's photographic image? Or do you remember a certain scene in which they gripped you? This article from Picture Play magazine claims that if you thought the former, it is their personal charm, charisma, or persona that has impressed you. If it is the latter, then it is effective acting that you recall. What is effective acting, though? Well, another article from Picture Play magazine in 1924 has the answer. Acting, they suggest, is not about an actor feeling. Rather, an actor's art form should be considered similar to that of a caricaturist, bringing out the highlights of a character and emphasising certain features so that the audiences are affected by them. A good actor reflects human nature back to us, but a great actor, and I quote, adds to the character and to the situation an element of abstraction. What do they mean by this? Abstraction in acting refers to representing emotions rather than choosing realistic actions. It is a highly stylized form of performance. But is it surprising that this was deemed great acting during this period of cinema? Not really. There was no dialogue to reveal key aspects of a character's feelings or psyche. Human gestures and movement was paramount and needed to convey vital emotional information to the viewer. A silent movie actor, then, must show emotion in its purest representational form, and not how one might actually physically respond in a real situation. Unlike stage actors, who need to project and make much larger gestures to be seen even at the back of the theatre, screen actors need to be careful about just how big their performances are. The close-up, for example, calls for minute movements whilst still clearly representing an emotion. According to the same 1924 article, the most effective acting is done with the eyes when the lower half of the face remains almost motionless. Again, this takes some skill. You are not moving your eyes or face in a way that might be natural in a realistic situation. Instead, the direction your eyes move or how little you blink, for example, needs to represent how a character is feeling. Earlier writings on acting style seem to agree. In 1915, Picture Play Weekly identifies the 3 skills required for good screen acting. Now, prepare yourself. The third one seems bizarre on the surface. They say that good actors must effectively use the eyes, their personality, and their fingers. Why fingers? Because we'd notice if there are only 9. Yes, that is a reason from the article. However, it redeems itself when it indicates how they can be used skillfully when gesturing. Why show you these obscure articles from the early years of cinema? Because many of these articles from this period emphasize some key points in particular. Namely, silent movie acting requires some really good emotive eye work. Film theorist Rudolf Arnheim considers human expression at length in his book Film as Art, noting how in life human facial expressions do not always truly show a person's mental state. For example, how some people look like they are laughing when they are in actual fact crying. Facial expression is only truly understood in its context. If we just heard an argument, we understand the person is crying because they are upset. But in art, and in particular on the screen, at least according to Arnheim, and the aforementioned 1920s fan magazines, the facial expression must be unmistakable. Here it should be noted that film theory and film fandom agrees. Emotions in film, to be understood, must be stylized and represent emotions in their abstract form, not their realistic form. So let's look at a master of screen acting at work. In Sudden Fear, Myra Hudson, played by Joan Crawford, runs through an array of emotions as she reacts to her husband's plot to murder her for money. What makes this performance so extraordinary is the unmistakable emotion within each alteration, and in particular, the use of her eyes, mouth, and hands, which, as a reminder, were the techniques often discussed during the silent era as the most effective tools in a screen actor's repertoire. So let's take a look at the scene in detail. At first, as Crawford hears the recording of her husband and his lover, she barely moves. This stillness reflecting the shock of what she has discovered. Now look how the stillness of her mouth contrasts with the roving movement of her eyes, drawing attention to them, ready for those tears to form. However, they don't immediately fall. She holds them there for a moment. Once she slowly closes the eyelids, we have moved from shock to pain. In this moment, we are engaging with our character's consciousness as she mentally moves through what this means for her and her marriage.
Oh, you smeared my lipstick. I've got to fix it before somebody comes. Where's a mirror?
Here, by the desk.
The slight quiver of the lip and slight frown show us disbelief as she questions whether her life has been a lie. Now she allows more movement of the head to reveal the emotional turmoil her character is going through. As it begins to downward turn with a slow eye close, it is as if this revelation is draining her, and she begins to show disgust for him, and perhaps disgust that she is in this situation.
Here it is. To my husband, Lester Blaine, on my death. $10,000 a year.
Is that all?
Get a load of this. Until he remarries.
And you thought you were playing it so smart, not taking anything from it. No presents, no jewelry, no handouts, no nothing.
Oh, if that dirty double-crossing dame thinks that she
Listen,
can...
she can't sign it till Monday.
Did Junior say that?
Yes. She comes into the rest of her old man's money Monday. She can't dispose of it till it's hers.
She doesn't sign the will until Monday, so what's the difference?
Suppose she isn't able to sign it on Monday.
The stillness returns as she allows her eyes to be fixed, but there is perceptible small muscle movement by her eye that I believe to be subconscious here. Something we might call emotional contagion, a term used by William Archer to describe an actor's biological response to the emotional states they are replicating. There's some wonderful body acting here, particularly that timed drop of the will. her prop use signifying her character's emotion, almost like she can't bear to hold the item they were referring to, like it's contaminated. As she moves further away from the camera, that recording in the foreground looms large. It's a very interesting choice to mirror her acting, making her seem small and helpless to the large and threatening recording. Her body movements emphasise that fear and helplessness by never turning her back to the recording, using the wall for protection. It is also interesting that it seems as if she is being pushed along the wall. The voices in the room are so dominating and scary to her that her once safe home now makes her feel trapped, and she does not feel safe to be out in the open. Finally, we can see the unblinking fear here at the end, again returning to stillness to exemplify that emotion. Some may say Crawford's performance seems a little melodramatic, but it is important to note that when judging a performance, you should always consider if it is in harmony with the film's world. A good performance does not mean understated or naturalistic. Instead, ask yourself, does it match the world, narrative, or genre in which it is situated? Not to mention, of course, is this style of performance frequent during this historical period? This movie is a hybrid. It's a noir melodrama. In particular, it's a woman in distress movie, much like Sorry, Wrong Number from 1948. It was a very important film for Crawford. She wanted better roles, and so she agreed to waive her salary for a percentage of the profits. As you can see here, she was very keen on promoting it and went to cinemas to sell tickets to the public. It paid off. The film was successful, and Crawford was nominated for an Academy Award. The nomination for the Academy Award should be of no surprise after watching the clip from Sudden Fear. Her acting is superb, but what makes it so is her clear use of techniques that were truly applauded in the silent movie era. There is a contrast of stillness and movement between her mouth and eyes. It's also very stylised, with an element of abstraction. She is representing emotions rather than choosing realistic actions, such as the creeping against the wall with fixed open eyes. However, there is no doubt that this conveys vital emotional information to the viewer. And it's not the only emotion that is represented in this short clip, which gives the character psychological complexity. So, what makes a good screen performance? Like Crawford, use the silent movie era playbook and see the importance of choices made by an actor's face to represent emotion to the viewer. Better yet, watch Sudden Fear and let Crawford show you how it's done. Thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing for more film analysis content.